Welcome back. Today we are going to be flying out the F2H and you're going to be seeing every kill and every death in chronological order, because we are today looking at an unfiltered episode. Sorry that I have been kind of away. I'm relatively busy with work, exams and everything going on in real life, so I really haven't had much time to make these videos. I have plenty of content in the bank, so I thought, well, it's been almost 5 days, so I decided to start cooking today. The F2H used to be one of the worst jets in the entire game. At 8.0 this thing was criminally over-tiered. Now it has been lowered to 7.7 and it became kind of okay. And now at 7.3 it is actually pretty good. The SU-11 also finally went up to 7.3 and it's probably still better than this thing. And the guns are not what they used to be, but I'm running the ground belts, and even though the guns are nerfed to hell and back, they're a lot more manageable than trying to run the air belts nowadays. And the ground belts, of course, are great if you try to kill medium targets on the ground, because, you know, that's what they are intended for. So right now, if you are a ground RB player or someone that likes to kill light pillboxes and all that good stuff, then this is just by far the best belt to run. It's better for air, it's better for ground, and there's really no reason to run anything else. Before we get started today with the actual gameplay, thank you to all my YouTube members and my Patreons and everyone looking to get this decal to put over the vehicle. You can do so with the discount code down in the description, which will give you 3% off, as well as the decal with any purchase. So, how do we fly this thing? Well, it's very much dependent on what you are fighting, and I know you guys hate when I say this, because this really doesn't help you whatsoever, but I will be guiding you through the fights as we go today, because it's just a very average kind of plane. It doesn't really have any major strength, so you really just have to fly accordingly to the situation that is provided to you. And just to wrap up this game, this guy in the SU-11 starts camping his airfield because he's trying to preserve his KD, and then after like 4 or 5 minutes of doing so, he crashes into the runway trying to land. Pretty hilarious to me, and I just wanted to call him out. Next game, and now we're actually going to start having some decent gameplay so I can actually talk about something. I like to have a little bit of altitude in this thing. The acceleration is quite alright. Well, most of the things in this plane are quite alright. It was just, the problem is when you have quite alright at everything, at a too high of a BR, you basically have no strength versus anyone. And that's the main issue that this thing had. And now, the rip speed is still kind of low. It's not the fastest, but the acceleration and the turn time are quite good. And the retention is also pretty decent. But really, you want to just make sure that at the start of the game your team can actually win the fight. So I like to just go for people that are going for my teammates, go for people that aren't really paying attention. I'm not going to be focusing on bombers. I just want to make sure that my team survives, because you do not want to start 1v3, 1v4ing in this thing, because you simply do not have the strength in a certain area to outperform multiple people at once. So you really want to be careful at the start of the game. In a 1v1, this thing is pretty okay. You can fight most things. There are some things that will absolutely ruin your day, like ME-163s. But in general, you always have at least a little bit of wiggle room. Whether it be in retention, acceleration or speed, that pilot skill will matter. There aren't many planes that will just roll you over in your shed and pull down your pants like your uncle did. There's always a few, of course, at this beyond, but with some pilot skill you can come out of most situations, provided your enemy makes mistakes. Because something like an ME-163, C2B and planes like that, you can try to run out of fuel. But other than that, there is no real counterplay, and if they decide that you need to die at the start of the match, you really have no other options than just trying to dodge their guns until they run out of fuel. It's kind of sad. So, we have 2 Vampires on our 6, an A28 and the FB52 for the Italian tech tree, and both of these Vampires have better engines than the original British one. You do want to be kind of careful with them, because they do outmaneuver you completely. You do outrun them, and the acceleration, I mean, the difference isn't too massive, and you really want to be careful with them. One of them gets set on fire. I should have killed the other one, but I missed both my shots. Kind of unfortunate. We go head on. I only get a hit in, and at this point I'm getting kind of frustrated. But we still have speed, and we still have some room here to do something. And then an ME-262 pops up, and I'm not too sure which one it is. If this is a C2B, and he's gonna waste all his boosters to catch us, he's gonna slow us down to the point where the Vampire will just roll us over and pull down our pants, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm just gonna try to weather the storm a little bit. I'm gonna run away from him, see if he tries to use his boosters, or if it may be even an A variant where we don't really have to worry about him too much. I start out accelerating, or outrunning I should say, both of them. And this gives me a little bit of room. The J29 then however starts going vertical and is about to make an approach on us. But then the F86A5, which is also, it shouldn't be in this lobby, let's put it that way. It's way too strong here. He's gonna distract him and he's gonna start fighting them all at once and they all go for him. Very massive mistake on their end, but it's gonna make it so that we actually have some room now and we can actually start doing something. We go head on with the 262 and it was indeed an A model, so we didn't really have to worry about it too much, and that's good to know now, as the Vampire will now take top priority. He's the most dangerous plane that is over there. Unfortunately for us, he's actually gonna, well, not really focus us, but he's gonna decide to go for us instead of the A5, because the A5 is just nowhere near in range for him. The thing is, we have a lot of energy, we flew over them, we already were going faster, and they both had to do a 180, which now means in turn that we have a lot more energy. So we try to go a little bit of a spiral. I'm trying to make the Vampire bleed some speed, and I'm trying to make gradual turns, because the A5 is also on their 6 now. So I'm trying to keep them relatively straight so they can be cancelled by Twitter. So I'm simply just doing a little bit of a spiral, and if they try to go up for me, then they will get wiped out by the A5. And if they don't, and if they try to defend against the A5, then I will instantly get position on their 6. So right now we are in a pretty good position. The 262 is just going to burn up. The J29 decides to kind of cut off my spiral and intercept us, which is bad because now I have to reset and reapproach the entire situation. But we have the energy to do so. And I will just pull this J29 and the Vampire into this vertical all day long. The Vampire kind of breaks off however, and I'm kind of bummed out by that, because I wanted to fight them both to show you guys, but unfortunately for the J29, he didn't break off and he just got absolutely shitstormed. There is really little he can do. It's a J29A on top of that, and I had more energy, and we are comparably maneuverable. I probably have the upper hand in an actual dogfight as well, and I was just above him. I had position. All I had to do was just wait for him to kind of stall out and bring down the hammer. Long story short, he's in a disadvantageous position in a plane that's already worse to begin with. So that's the kind of situation where if I would mess it up, I'd probably delete the entire video, because I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Luckily, we didn't do any of that, and now we can mop up the Vampire that is being engaged by the A5 Sabre. The Vampire goes vertical. He's super slow and he basically can't do anything here. He tries to dodge, but he's too slow and we are not going to be missing that. And then he goes back to the hangar. Then there's an F84G left, and he is going to be faster than us, and he's actually very annoying to deal with. Luckily we have an A5 Sabre, which will very easily catch him. And I'm just making sure that we are kind of flying staggered. We don't fly in the same line, and if this guy starts doing anything, then if the A5 misses him, then I can just park myself on his ass. Which is exactly what we end up doing. Right now we are not really catching him. I'm cutting him off slightly. The A5 goes onto a 6 and he starts going vertical, but because we are staggered, we are not forced to go by his loop. We just cut off his loop and now we are directly on a 6. Very easy, very clean. Squeeze the trigger, shoot his wingtip off, and he becomes a tree hugger. Wise Mystical Tree says hello, and the F84G goes into the next lobby. Game is done, game is won, and we just go into the next one as well. So what do? Well, there's a 262 right below us, and I know I can get a pretty easy frag here, and I just want to make sure that he is dead. Unlike last game, where I was actually able to save someone, kind of, over here there's really no one around, and I'm not going to be flying around doing nothing. I'd rather just go down, get some shots in, kill an enemy, and then leave the area. This way I make sure that no one dies to a stupid head-on or gets caught off guard. Or maybe I have to 1v4 at the end of the game and now it's only a 1v3. So getting numbers down at the start is always the best way to win. Unless of course there is a teammate that really needs your help, or it's like a plane that's super important to kill first. Something like an ME-163 that's maybe busy with a fight. And even though your teammate might win that fight, a plane like an ME-163, you want to make sure that he actually dies right there. If you need to fight that guy later on and you don't have teammates to distract him with, just kiss your ass goodbye. There is really nothing you're going to be doing against him unless he actually sends it in something like a head-on, because you can barely reverse those guys even if he is completely inept at this game. A lot of 163 pilots are, but really the ME-163 is basically just a cheat for about 4 minutes. You have the first 2 minutes where you have to take off and get altitude, and you actually are extremely heavy. But once it burns through a little bit of its fuel and it becomes slightly lighter, after like 2-ish minutes, it just becomes an absolute menace. And unfortunately for you, you mostly start running into it when it's about at that fuel time, because, well, guess what? You have to fly towards the middle of the map. So you really want to make sure that those things die, or you camp the airfield kinda, and you just make sure that if he starts taking off, you fight him as early on as possible. The longer that thing survives, the longer that thing keeps burning its fuel, the bigger of a problem it starts becoming, until of course the last bit where he is so low on fuel that he basically can't fight you anymore and he needs to go RTB. But I'll show you an example of that in the next game here. Right now we are fighting planes that can't really do much against us. The MiG-9s and the 262s are really not that much of a threat. I remember flying the MiG-9 a very long time ago, and I'm talking like 2017 when I was getting my first jets. And I had to fight the Banshees, and the Banshees were, even when they were worse than you, a bit of a problem to kill. And the MiG-9s were actually, and still are, pretty good. They're not bad vehicles at all. They have been kind of power crapped by planes like the Su-11, but in general it's still a very solid plane, and I remember just barely being able to kill this thing. Simply because it's so average at everything. But the MiG-9 had some issues, some pretty big issues, which this thing can very easily just counter. And I'm of course talking about the MiG-9 late, not the MiG-9 regular. 262 dives on us, so we make sure we stay out of his guns, and then we just kind of fly in front of him, because he has so many teammates, or enemies I should say, around, that all I have to do is make sure that I just kind of raid fight him, because that's the kind of fight that I will very easily win from that position. It of course depends on the energy states and stuff, because at very high speed the 262 will actually pull into you. He probably won't run the raid fight, and he has the lead an awful lot because of those MK108s. But I'm not really scared of fighting 262s even when they are on my 6. And that's not a flex, that's mostly just me mocking the 262, because it's just very much flawed. The 262 goes vertical with the Su-11, a fight he won't win on his own anyway. And this guy is basically stalled out, so now I just want to make sure that he actually dies. I have some absolutely terrible aim, make sure that I don't land on top of the MiG-9. And then we reposition and start spraying at him. Not much to talk about here. The guy gets crit, he goes upside down, we shoot a little bit more, and he's gonna fly into the ground. Same story here. It's only a B-57, but even a B-57 can be a great distraction, and it's a 262 and he's below us, so I just want to go head on with him if he wants to take this. I do want to be careful that it's not an A1U1, and it is. I saw those orange tracers and I instantly thought, get the hell out of here, because you don't want to fly into those 30mm. This damage model is pretty strong, but you're not gonna have a good time after you've been damaged. He gets crit by the other guy. I dive into the other 262 A1U1. And I just hold trigger down and basically give him the exact same set of damage as the one that's been crit before. Now they're both on fire, they're both just kind of flying around. And we just wait for them to burn up. 262 on fire is gonna accomplish a whole lot of nothing. So we just want to make sure that we actually don't die to someone else now. The 262 on top of us, the one that isn't burning. You can tell which one it is because he isn't actually on fire. Might catch us off guard, and there's also a lot of enemies above us. The MiG-15, the LA-200 and the Me-163 is basically the holy trinity of stuff you don't want to run into in this thing. And the LA-200 is mainly just an issue because it's so damn quick. It's stupendously fast, especially for 7.7. It's not the best turn fighter, but if he plays it properly, there is essentially nothing you can do. But the LA-200 is also very hard to aim with. It is very hard to get kills with if you actually are aware of him. So I'm actually going to focus on the MiG-15, because the MiG-15 basically just clubs us in every direction if he wanted to. And he is, right now, he's distracted. So he's a great target to take out now. I won't buy him dinner, however. I'm just going to put him in the ground. So I shoot a few rounds at him. I crit his wingtip, and a crit wingtip in a MiG-15 if you are upside down, let me tell you, it's not exactly a great look, and I'm not entirely sure if this guy is going to be pulling out of this one. Luckily for us, he cream pies the ground. Unfortunately for him, he now needs to buy a coat hanger. So we turn around. The LA-200 is engaging my blood brother in the F2H. He gets crit. And the LA-200 is now in a pretty vulnerable position. He goes head on, he kind of dodges us. I wasn't sure if he was going to pull in, so I kind of tried to anticipate the last pull-in head-on, but he didn't. And now I'm cutting off the LA200 in the case that he tries to turn around, and he does so. It's a very bad call on his end. And I'm gonna try to get some shots in. I missed the first burst. And the second burst, get some hits in. I hit him some more, and I hit him a hell of a lot more. I crit one of his engines, I think. And he is just gonna be running away from us. Super annoying. LA200s are just an absolute pain in the ass, and we are gonna be chasing him together with one of his buddies to make sure that this F84G gets his ass cleared. And the LA200 is still just flying full speed ahead, and there's two Su-11s on our left. And there's an ME-163 somewhere. The 262 is, well, very much tunnel vision. And then another plane pops up, and it's the MiG-9. So right now it's basically 2v4. But the F-84 has been running for a while now, and the LA200 is crit. So I'm basically just counting this as a 3v1 for now. Or at least I'm preparing for one. But the first Su-11 kind of breaks off, and he gives us a little bit of room with the first one together with the MiG-9. And both of these guys I can somewhat deal with. I don't feel too bad about dogfighting a MiG-9 together with an Su-11. The issue is that guy right there. The 163. Not sure what the MiG-9 was cooking, but he didn't want the smoke and he just plants it into a tree. And now, I mean, I'd much rather fly against the MiG-9 opposed to a 163, because the 163 will catch us, will outclimb us, will out-accelerate us, and will outrun us. And that's basically the biggest fuck you can run into, a 163 on your 6. The thing is, he already has a few kills. It's quite a bit into the match. And he is trying to follow me. So I'm kind of just going to fly away from this guy until he runs out of fuel. And you might think that's extremely boring. But the thing is, I can't actually outrun him. I need to make sure that I just keep him at a basically arm's length. And hope that he doesn't get some long range shots in. The thing is, with the MK108s now being nerfed in terms of velocity. Well, every gun is since quite a while. He basically needs to lick my ass to be able to actually start shooting. The F-84 takes down the LA200, which is absolutely massive, and is now together on that side of the map with the Su-11, which now kills the F-84. So basically back to the 3v1 that I talked about, I think, a minute or two ago. The Su-11 is trying to cut me off, and the 163, well, this is kind of rough, but I'm trying to use the Return to Battlefield map border. So we both map border, but I put ourselves in like different positions by going sideways into it. And it ends up working quite well. He's now 0.65 away from us, and I am going to be flying straight again. The Su-11 did a turnaround, and he will actually start catching us instantly. And guess what? The 163 is out of fuel. So now, finally, after like 5 minutes of 1v3s and 1v2s, we can finally 1v, oh, there's the second one, we can go back to a 2v1. But two Su-11s is a lot more doable than something like an Su-11 and a 163, or a 163 and anything, or a 163 on his own. We go head on, we still have one on our 6, so I'm gonna wait for the one in the head on to start passing us, and then we turn into the guy that went head on with us, to go defensive at the same time with the guy that's on R6. A little bit convoluted, but right now I'm almost going to get the shot on this guy, but I mess up the rudder and I'm not able to actually get a shot in. Right now we are in a very vulnerable position, but it's a 2v1 against two Su-11s. What can you expect? This guy is going to pull behind us, I dodge his guns, but doing so parks me right in front of this guy. Luckily we do turn a little bit tighter, so as long as we stay above his nose, he shouldn't be able to pull lead on us, because he's also going a little bit quicker. But at this point I'm basically forced to break off because of the second guy, but he did something really wacky and he decided to break off. We then recommit to the first Su-11, because if I tried to run away he would get a very firm grasp on my 6. So I try to force the fight as soon as possible again, but I notice that the other one is again turning back into us. So I'm trying to just reverse the Su-11, we should turn just a little bit tighter. And we are going to be getting the shot here in a second. There we go, we line it up, we squeeze the trigger, and of course we get another hit. That's 2 hits on these Su-11s, one in the head-on from earlier. We turn into the first one again, and now, because if I keep turning there, the Su-11 is basically going to get a free shot. So right now I'm just going to extend away, I'm going to try to keep my speed up a little bit, because without speed I'm not going to be able to dodge these guys. These Su-11s, if they are running min fuel, should be running out here in a minute or two. And I'm just hoping one of them starts breaking off and Boondock whatever actually starts doing that. We still have 10 minutes left. We are gonna force the dogfight here, but he just keeps flying straight. And I'm not entirely sure what he does here. And this guy just absolutely throws the match. He turns in front of us, and despite having more energy and he will out accelerate us as well, he's just gonna end up trying to reverse us. A little bit of a bad idea, because that's basically my biggest advantage. But we set him on fire, we hit him some more, we hit him some more, and he is gonna burn up and die. And then the last two guys are going to land and leave. A little bit anticlimactic, but thank you all for watching.